Shattering Red, Chapter 17. Crowds. What's wrong with this? She had a form-fitting suit that matched Luck's in every way except for the allowances for her curves. She fixed the red bow tie around his neck, which she felt really completed the modern spin on the classic tux look. "Where would you like me to start?" he asked, flicking off a piece of lint. She grabbed his hand and they exited the public bathroom. They were a few blocks away from the main event, and everyone was being herded to the amphitheater. Here the blooms were at the pinnacle of their beauty, their greenery so lush that aside from the windows and screens, all currently dedicated to the political party that Vita and Luck were about to crash, a person wouldn't know that giant buildings were beneath the massive plants. Fireflies dithered in droves, enough to make it look as though there were currents of lights in the air. Fancy light-up shoes combated the glow of the luminous mushrooms at the base of the guard walls. People mirrored the fireflies in numbers, bouncing backward and forward, making waves to the center of the city. The noise of thousands of voices bouncing through the city streets would have been discombobulating had they not been wearing noise-canceling transceivers in their ears. They were able to easily speak to each other, even if they got separated, which gave Vita great comfort. The night was still young, but the streets were so packed that it would take them a while to get there, along with everyone else. They didn't miss a thing, though. The candidates were all accounted for, and they had access to tunnels that were under their podiums that outlined the circle of the arena they were headed to. There was still an hour or so before the main event, and early access spectators, like the press, were interviewing the candidates and broadcasting across every screen of the city, so the crowd was not idly walking to the assembly. Luck seemed genuinely perturbed to be around so many people. "Are you okay?" Vita asked him. "I expected a lot of people, but after what we saw at the other city, somehow, this makes me feel much more claustrophobic than I anticipated." He smiled. "Not a big deal. I just somehow feel like an animal being led to slaughter." They inched another step forward in the sea of bodies. People dressed according to the party they were rooting for, and the nearer they got to the center of town, the more it seemed like people were naturally sorting themselves into like-minded outfits. They were absorbed by the mob dressed just like them. The heat of the day circulated with the heat of the bodies, creating a visible mirage off the heads of the crowd. Their group was pinned next to a woman and children, dressed completely from head to toe in bright pink. They held various signs expressing their approval of Talbot's opinions. "Yuck," Vita said in response, wanting to be anywhere other than next to these women. She had to keep reminding herself that they didn't know anything. That's why they were here. Luck saw her conniption barely being kept in check and moved to be on the outside of their bubble between her and the pink crowd. A woman close to her heard her and started chanting, "Reproduction is a right! A limit of 2 is wrong!" It rallied the rest of the pink crowd and even encouraged other groups to start chanting in unison. That was not what she had meant to do with her offhand comment. The chanting brought cameras. Luck ducked them further into the crowd to avoid being seen, while the screaming continued around them. The only reason they were not easily picked out by the network and were able to slip away was due to the sheer mass of bodies distorting readings in the system. With their quickened pace, they made it to the arena in half an hour, doing a strange jig through the crowd. They could visually see the candidates standing on white daises above the crowd. A woman was asking a question from a single larger podium in the center of the room. Just the talk of opening a new surrogacy center has so many in the community questioning the population control number of just 2 kids per household. What are your responses to the pushback against this old law? The camera then panned to each campaigner, who then had 30 seconds to respond. Vita turned to Luck at that question, wondering something she had never considered before. "Do you think you benefited from having so many siblings?" she asked as they found a table in a busy corner and sat, pulling out snacks. "Absolutely. Right or wrong, I always had support and someone to talk to. There was no hesitation in his answer, which made her think he had spent some time considering the matter. What do you think about the population cap of 2 kids per household here? Vita watched as his mouth pulled into an irritated line. I think it's weird. I think I see the argument, but I don't agree with it. Luck had crossed his arms defensively. Vita actually agreed with the law. She had seen so many children pass from the system into adulthood without ever finding a family. It wasn't right for people to hoard babies just because they came from their seed, and the surrogates took away the danger of regular pregnancy. What about kids in the system? She blinked at him. What about them? He answered back. Vita wondered if having to grow up on the streets with siblings had left him jaded. Smart kids come from all places. But that doesn't mean they should have to, especially when the room is already there if people decide to make room. She settled on the fact that she was more than a little jaded too. But she had been lucky enough to be taken in. They both tuned into the next question, not making eye contact, and noticed the lights were starting to dim to let the room know that this was the last question before the main show. When are we going to give up the crutch of the surrogacy centers and return to natural birthing? A blond man asked, much to the jeers of the crowd and politicians. People don't just have the kids they put into each other? He asked Vita, who was seriously at a loss for what to say. No, it's very harmful to the health of the female. All babies, except for a few rare cases, are born through the surrogacy program, she blinked at him. This was just the way it had always been. When women were finally declared equal in our society, the right to choose shaped our culture for the better. The population cap was to ensure we didn't outgrow our ability to feed offspring. Do you want kids? He asked, sounding a little dejected. No, I have never found life to be very satisfying. Have you? She patted his hand, and the lights flickered again. After this whole kerfuffle, I don't think I'll be wanting any soon. There was so much she didn't agree with in life. She didn't see a reason to bring an innocent being into it, only to watch it be squashed by human nature. Is that a goal of yours? Luck nodded, letting the conversation go when loud patriotic music began to echo around the massive dome that emulated the clear night sky above. Good evening, great people of Aphthonia. The deep, pastel tone of a male announcer took over the dense crowd. Since Vita and Luck had sat down at the tables, the floor space had been overrun with bodies. They couldn't even move their chairs without hitting people. We ask you all to stand while we play the national anthem. The sound of everyone standing, Luck and Vita included, sounded like a thunderclap. A woman took over, in almost an operatic, high-pitched voice. She wailed, "Land of plenty, by the sea, cooperation for the good of the many, led free by logic and technology. Aphthonia, Aphthonia, we love and care for you." Even with such a short devotion, she managed to mess up the last note. Applause met the chamber, and the male voice continued, "You may be seated." The noise of everyone sitting caused a low rumble. "Today we have 9 of our best and brightest politicians in front of you," resumed the male with perfect vocal finesse from the middle podium where the questions were being asked. The screens passed over each of their faces. There were only 3 women, one of whom represented a smaller community that was often neglected or shamed in the societal order. All the others were men. They gather to listen to your questions and weigh in with their solutions, and by the end of the evening, you will be offered your choice to vote for your favorite. The lights danced around whimsically with music as he continued. We're going to kick off the questioning by first giving each participant a moment to explain what their main goals are to accomplish while in office. The room went black, and the first politician took over the dome in the sky and every screen. What do you think? Vita nudged Luck. All the politicians had pre-recorded videos that would play for their introduction. It seemed like the perfect time for Luck to play the video. He nodded, already toggling through something on his screen. He's fourth in line. I'm getting everything set up. I don't want to place it too early and let people know we're messing with it. It's about twice as long as his video is supposed to be. He swatted the back of his neck as a bug bit him. They reached out to hold hands over the table while they waited. And waited. It felt like the videos, which were all under 5 minutes, took forever. The pleasantness of their plastic politicians was repulsive. The weeks of running and loss were building like a symphony about to hit crescendo, her inner beat strengthening beneath the pulse in her ears. She stood, her body saying she needed to be elsewhere, but she wasn't even quite sure where that destination was. "Where are you going?" Luck asked, as her hand pulled away from his. "I'm not sure," she answered truthfully. His response was to reach out for her, but she brought her hand up to her chest and stood just in front of him. "But I will find you after." She glanced over at the podium in the middle of the room. "If you follow my lead, can you give me some dramatic lighting?" "Sure," he replied, knowing she was about to do something stupid and cathartic. "Hey." He managed to grab her hand and stand up as she tried to walk away. "For Luck. Or me, I guess." He leaned down, and for one spectacular moment, they melted at the lips. She allowed it until the ending of the second politician's introduction. Then she parted with a smile, turning and disappearing into the overcrowded dark room. Thanks so much to listening to Shattering Red, Chapter 17. If you've liked what you've heard so far, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, or whatever it is that you do to make sure you hear what's coming next. If you like the book so far, I'm going to post the Amazon link below, but please know that it is available on any major online book retailer. If you don't want to buy the book but would like to support me, I will include a link to my Kofi account. Thanks so much. Take care.